Okay, right. So, Siobhan, thank you.
Right, sorry. Okay, so hi everybody, thank you for inviting me. I'm going to just talk for a little bit about the work that we've been trying to do to engage with undecideds and look at the reasons why we did that and how we can offer advice on how we get out the yes bubble, if that makes sense. I was part of the, back in I think it was 3 years ago, we set up the Dundee Independence group again. We reset it up, and one of the things that we wanted to do was go into communities. So what we did was basically do things like family fun days kind of thing. We wanted to create a non-politicised environment, not a public meeting, but a kind of comfortable environment for people to come along and speak about some of the issues. What we did recently, however, just in July last year, we actually decided to come out of the Yes Dundee and Angus group completely, because we began to feel that actually what it was doing, it was restricting our communication with undecided people and people within local communities. And what we did, this is an extreme example I think, but what we thought was, we're now called Imagine Scotland. We took away the Yes label, we took away the Independence label, and we created a kind of new group called Imagine Scotland, thinking about the future. And that was kind of based on the Citizens' Assembly concept of everybody thinking about what kind of Scotland that we want. And that's basically our byline, what kind of Scotland do you want? And that's the question that we always pose towards people now. So there's certain things that we do, and we found it's been much more freeing. We get into areas that we would never have got with a Yes label, for instance. We did a 6-week artistic exhibition with the Dundee International Women's Centre, for instance, looking for new Scotswomen, how they managed to kind of manage with the transition, how they kind of feel about the future in Scotland, what they can contribute to Scotland, and all these kind of things. And at the end, they kind of created a kind of an art exhibition. What we're planning on doing is going into the deprived communities. I'm from Dundee, so it's pretty much most of Dundee, to be fair. We're going to go into deprived communities and speak to people about what they want from the future. Now, it comes from the basis of confidence in your own self, confidence in your family, confidence in your community, and therefore confidence in Scotland. And it's the basic principle of, we're going to ask people, what is it you want from Scotland? What is it you can contribute? And what is it you want from the future in Scotland? Because that's the question I think that everybody's now got to answer. Yesterday, as grief-stricken as I am, yesterday the status quo ended. The status quo absolutely ended yesterday, and we're now moving into this vortex of a political unknown. Now for us, Richard picked up on this I think earlier on. He was saying the group of people that are struggling at the moment, and the people that we need to engage with, are those that voted no in 2014 and those that voted no or remain in 2016. Now, if you think of the psychology behind that kind of vote, what it is basically you're looking for people who wanted the status quo or who didn't want radical change. Lots of people do, but not many. These group of people tend to exist within the status quo. Yesterday, the status quo ended. Now, if you think about that, that is a really, really difficult thing for people to engage with. It's worrying. You're stuck between two chasms. The Brexit chasm, which we all know is going to be disastrous. But if you're worried about independence as well, where do you go? Where do you go? It's okay for us. We know that independence is going to be okay, yeah? We know that because, we are hardened yes supporters, all that kind of stuff. But for those that are undecided and those that really don't want massive change, there is a massive anxiety and uncertainty amongst people. And so the way that we see our group is actually not so much to navigate yes as such, but to help people navigate the changes that are about to take place. And that's the way we see it. We want to create a space for people to think through the issues and to think through what the choices for them now are. Because there's two choices. That's all we've got now. There's Brexit and there's independence. The only choices we've got. There's no middle ground anymore, and that's the thing. And we see our role as actually helping people navigate themselves through that, because it's a difficult decision for a lot of people, and it's a scary decision for a lot of people. So what we're actually about to do now is we're about to embark on a kind of 10 kind of area project. But the next thing that we're about to do is we're going to do a bit of a Pesha Kushi evening, getting people to think about what their future for Scotland is. The difficulty that Yes Groups has, and this is what we're finding actually, is that we fall back, when you're organising an event, you fall back on your Yes contacts. So what we're going to do and what we're trying to do right now, and it's a difficult thing to do, is completely bypass the local Yes movement and creating an event where we actually actively discourage Yes activists for coming along. Now that seems ludicrous, it seems good. We're part of the Yes movement, but we're actively discouraging Yes activists. But actually what we found is, and this is the thing, I think that what we have to start doing is reset what we think is a successful event, okay? We did an event, the most successful event we've done, right, is the one where there was the least amount of people, but actually very few were Yes activists. It was just local people from the local area coming in for a cup of tea and, what's this about? And, what's this kind of, what do you mean the future of Scotland? What do you mean about health? These kind of things. These were just people that never really thought about independence, never really kind of engaged with the debate kind of thing. But that for us was the most successful event, because what you had was people who were open to at least engaging in a way that they felt comfortable. You can have, so it's resetting what you think. Okay, I did an event a wee while ago, and it was for my local villages. I live in a wee village outside Dundee, so it was for the local villages, and it was meant to be to get women in the village to engage in the Brexit debate. And what happened was, well, it was successful in the sense that it was a good discussion, but what we had was the usual Yes supporters coming along, so it was actually, it wasn't successful, it was actually a failure. In my eyes, it was a failure. Because what we're doing, if we're not engaging with the undecided, then what are we doing? It's great getting bolstered up by fellow Yes activists. There's a real kind of comfort in that. But what we need to do is try and get away from the Yes. Yesterday we were having a meeting about the next event, and it was that kind of, we fall into these wee traps kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, right, we'll advertise it in the National. No, why would we advertise it in the National when it's only Yes activists that are reading it? Okay, oh yes, it would be great, we can get the SNP act. No, we can't do that, because actually that's just the SNP activists going to come along. So actually what we've decided to do is completely bypass everything connected to Yes organisations locally, and we're literally just ploughing through a list of local organisations within Dundee. That's drama groups, that's social pressure groups, that's environmental groups, that's social justice groups, all these groups in Dundee that are not connected to Yes, but actually have a stake in Scotland's future and actually have an interest in Scotland's future. And that's what we're trying to do, is basically we try to kind of create an event that will get people thinking about the future of Scotland, but try and get it outside that yes, no divide. Because we actually work on the assumption that we're going to be independent. And actually what we need to do is we need to help people cope with the transition that's about to happen. Because we think if you provide people with a space to think through these really difficult issues that are going to come along, and people have to start making a decision now, and there's a wee bit of pressure there as well, but we have to offer a sympathetic and open and comfortable space for people to make those decisions now. Because I'll tell you something else, a Better Together campaign run by Dominic Cummins will never give you space to think. It will never give you space to think. So there's a protective mechanism there. If we offer people space and time to think through these issues, I'm absolutely convinced they're going to come over to Yes anyway. It's a hard thing to do. It's a difficult thing to do, because there's comfort in going back to your Yes activists. And we were slipping into this, we'll do this, we'll do that. No, we can't. We have to rethink what creates a successful event for us. 3 undecideds at a meeting is better than 50 Yes voters, and that's the way we look at it. That's a successful event because you've engaged 3 people who are unsure, rather than just making Yes supporters all the more enthusiastic about Yes. Because when it comes down to it, an enthusiastic Yes vote is still only 1 vote. It's the undecideds we need to get to now.
Thanks, Siobhan. I don't disagree with anything Siobhan has said. That's exactly the challenge, really, for us. Because as Siobhan says, that's hard. Because getting us in a room today on a Saturday, we know we like talking about politics. We can come and have arguments within that framework because we all know we're on the same side. This is the easy bit. But I think what that shows us is that actually, however long it is between now and our next independence referendum, the last independence referendum, two things need to happen. Not only do we need to build the movement for an independent Scotland, because we do need to build the movement, because it's us who are going to be out there having the conversations, as Siobhan has said, with undecideds, but we then need to target undecideds. And there's a tension in that. How do you build a movement and focus on the undecideds? And I think we need to hold that tension and make sure that we know what it is we are trying to do with every activity we are going to undertake, and to differentiate them appropriately. So differentiate, what is movement building? So, marches and rallies, they are good things because they draw people who are supporters into the movement. They energize our base, if you like, in campaigning speak. We need that. We need that desperately to make sure that we have enough people to then go and create the spaces in our schools, in our universities, in our workplaces, in at the bus stop, those spaces to talk to people you see every day. So it's about that differentiation. And in some ways that's exactly what Voices for Scotland is trying to do. Voices for Scotland is putting together a whole series of resources, some of which you'll have already, but not everybody has the same infrastructure or capacity as Aberdeen Independence Movement does. But it's about having a place where we can pool resources, experiences, and things that we know can work. And one of the toolkits that we're pulling together is around exactly those we're calling them conversation cafes. It's not a new idea. It's a phrase that works. Conversation cafes where you do exactly that. You organise a meeting and you don't invite yes supporters. So the target of Voices for Scotland is very clearly about undecideds. That also means that there are people that we will never talk to. Not only will we, we will never talk to people who are determined unionists. There is no point. Okay, we are not going to change everybody's minds. Let's focus on the minds we know we can change. And that's that sort of middle group of undecideds. So yes, we need to talk to confirmed indie supporters to build the movement, to build the energy, to enthuse the movement. And then we need to use those people as individuals out in their communities, out in their neighbourhoods, on their streets, to talk to the undecideds. So that peer shifting is the vital part of the campaign. In those discussions, we need to make sure that vision, coming back to your question, the last question from the previous session, that's essential. Let's have the space. What in the conversation cafes we've run, it's what are your hopes for Scotland's future? It is that open a question. And then you can start, well, what does that look like? What does that look like for education? What does that look like for health? What does that look like for energy? If you get into those kinds of discussions, in some cases you will, in other cases you won't, and that's okay. But it's about building that vision. And I think we can see very, very clearly, in 2014, we lost. We didn't quite get enough people, but we had a hell of a great time doing it because it was fun. Campaigning for independence in 2014 was fun, even in the rain, even in the cold. It was about hope, essentially, and that's what we need. And there's a reason why the 2016 Remain campaign lost. It was dull as dishwater. So let's not have one of those. It is about creating the space for the vision, for the fun, for the energy to come through each of us into the communities and into the groups of undecideds. And one of the things that makes campaigning fun is when we're drawing on individuals' emotions. it has to be fun. It's got to speak to us as human beings. Facts are all very well, but if any of you are involved or have been involved in social justice campaigning or community campaigning, facts don't usually win. Like, they aren't the thing that help you win. Emotion does. And so, throwing loads of facts at people as your approach is not going to be the successful strategy. We need to have those facts for when we are asked specific questions, but that's not your first foray into that discussion. Your first foray is that vision. What do we want our country to be? If you had a completely blank piece of paper, how would you start a new country? It's those kinds of questions that we need to be asking. Siobhan has touched on this as well, and your point around silos are difficult to knock down, bubbles are easy to burst. Language matters. Language matters an awful lot, and it is so tempting, and I'm sure I've done it myself, to say, you were wrong, I told you so. Don't. Okay, it's very easy to do that, and yeah, we all want to do it all the time, maybe now especially, but that's not going to win us any friends. The other thing is, and yes groups, and I say yes groups around the country, again, this is a really, really hard thing for them to do. I think we need to abandon yes.
Yeah.
Firstly, we don't know if it's going to be the same question. And even if it is, if you have yes emblazoned on your forehead and you walk up to an undecided, what in that language invites them to talk to you?
Exactly.
What in that language invites them to talk to you openly rather than oh no, back off, I don't like the look of this, I don't want to be told what to think. And more importantly, I don't want to be told that I was wrong in 2014. So abandon yes, and that's so hard to do, because it's become our language, it's become our culture, it's become everything we do. Flags, badges, banners, the whole lot. So hard to let go from that. It's also hard to let go from because it's positive, and positive campaigning is always more fun to be involved in than other campaigning. But it is. In Voices for Scotland, when we're talking, you'll see us on social media and at our events, we use the language of Scotland for everyone. That's not as snappy as yes, I get that, but it is about no voice should be left unheard. And that means sometimes hearing things we don't want to hear, but also the recognition that we know, as people who've been around, we know that we are not going to get 100% in the next referendum. So when we win the next referendum, we are going to have to live and work with people who voted the other way. And so we need to campaign as if we know we need to live and work with people who disagree with us, fundamentally disagree with us. And so that language, that the way in which we carry our campaigning messages is really, really important. And I suppose all of this boils down very simply for me, and I think our politics generally needs so much more of this, is kindness. Be kind. When has somebody been kind to you ever made you turn around and it doesn't happen. And sometimes it's so hard because you want to punch them in the face because they've been saying and doing the wrong things for so long. I need to sit on my hands quite a lot because, I get very angry very quickly at some people. But there's no point in that. Hold that for when you can close the door. When you can go into a quiet, sometimes very dark room. And soundproofing, yeah. It seems so simple when you think about it, and it is so simple. And it's also very easy, and we must all recognise and acknowledge this. It's really easy to get wound up in the heat of the moment and say and do things that are wrong. And when that happens, say, look, I'm sorry, I got overexcited, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, and again, because that you're admitting you're a human being, and that says something also about the kind of country we want to build. Humans are welcome here. You don't have to think exactly the right thing. You don't have to say exactly the right thing. You can make mistakes. You can get it wrong and change. That's okay. But I'm not going to tell you you were wrong and hope that helps you change your mind. It's about being kind and showing humanity, because surely that is the kind of country we are wanting to create. I think I'll stop there and are we going to
Yeah,
have
we can
a
have,
discussion?
I think, yeah. Folks, can we have some questions, please? We've got about 5 minutes. Yes.
I would just like to say that's music to my ears, what you've just said. I've been a member of the Scottish National Party for decades, like 50 years. But what you're saying really enthuses me, because I feel the only way that we can help other people maybe see another point of view is to get away from party politics.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a big problem, that it becomes either the SNP and the Greens, and then the Labour and the Tories.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you have ideas other than what you've said, because it sounds like tremendous that you're working with communities, how we can do that more away from party politics. Because I think that's the only way forward.
Just literally trying to organise something this morning before I came here along those lines, actually, as was mentioned in Dundee, and what we're trying to do now. And this is kind of slightly different from the Imagine Scotland stuff that I do. It's kind of more politically direct, I think, is maybe your kind of where your question is going. And what we want to do within Dundee is create a kind of public meeting structure to invite all people from, and actually not invite political parties. We want to invite people from organisations, environmental organisations, again, social justice, all these kind of organisations that have a stake in how Dundee is run. And we want to do that, we want to bring that along, and actually the longer, maybe medium-term plan is to create a structure where there's something kind of similar to the Citizens' Assembly structure, where people in Dundee come together and actually find a common ground on the things that we want. We know we want a renewable future. We know we want an NHS. So there's lots of things that we can all come together on. Now that includes Labour. Actually, we don't even need to go into the party politics of it. It's bringing people together now, I think, to find the common ground and find a consensus, and to do that maybe in a bit more of a formal political structure. What we would like to do is actually do that meeting and create a public statement at the end for a kind of mass media kind of output and say, these are the things that we agree on. And it will be things like we want to end of poverty, we want an NHS, we want this, but we all agree that we need this. The question now is, how do we build that? And so we're in Dundee, we're literally trying to kind of create something along those lines.
Exactly that. But also, I mean, I think also you will know what will work in your community, and the trick is just not okay. So we're going to have this event. We know it's about Scotland's future. Oh, I know who the SNP and Greens are to invite. No, just don't.
Didn't even let them in. Didn't even let them in.
I mean, the people who are engaged in civic organisations more generally, whether it's environmental groups, social justice campaigners, many of them may well be political party members, and that's fine. But it comes back to what I said earlier about redefining not only what we mean by democracy, but redefining what we mean by politics.
Yeah.
And I've never actually really been a very good party politician, and yeah, I can say that with much more freedom now than I used to be able to. I'm still a member of the Greens, and I still, I'll not go into that now. But I think party politics is one very, very small element of our political structure. Well, it should be one very, very small element of our political structures. Politics is about everything in our everyday, and I think it's about just being able to speak to people on that basis. Because, politics isn't for me, it happens over there, it happens in Holyrood, or it happens in Westminster, or, well, not anymore, it doesn't happen in Brussels, but, that just removes it from people's lives, and that makes it irrelevant. So why would they engage? So it's about talking to people we know, where we know them, where they feel comfortable, where they feel safe, where they feel they can trust whatever they say. They're not going to be pilloried, they're not going to be laughed at, they're not going to be made to feel stupid, because we're never going to win if that's what we do.
Yeah.
Just
Richard.
say that from a personal perspective, it's what constitutes a Scot. And there's 5 million of us in Scotland, and I'll bet you, a pound a pinch of you-know-what, there's absolutely no two opinions the same in any of these 5 million people. So this is what you're basing now. There must be an edge in somewhere. there must be an advantage for being a Scot, whether you're a Tory, whether you're Labour, whether you're left-wing, right-wing, or whatever. And that's what we need to actually approach, that include these people in building this new country. And say, yeah, maybe I didn't agree with you on your politics, you won't agree with mine, you won't agree with him, her, or whatever, but what have you got to contribute to this country? If it's going to happen, then you're going to be a part of it. So maybe start with that kind of mindset, as opposed to thinking left, right, political party, SNP, blah, blah, blah. I particularly, at one stage, fell out with a very good friend and neighbour of mine because he was a no supporter, he was attacking Nicola Sturgeon. He's mellowed, I've mellowed, now we're back on speaking terms, and now we can actually talk about a future. And maybe that's the sort of stuff we need to take to 2014 and think, yeah, that was then, this is now. This is a grown-ups now. We're no longer, political bears. We're now savvy. And to take that aspect of thinking, well, nobody thinks the same, so let's find it. There will be common ground somewhere.
I actually think that that's kind of spot on. And I think that we forget that since Brexit, we've been, I think, as a society, we've been slightly traumatised actually, because we're taken out of Europe against our will. But there's also an element of we've been told what to think.
Yeah.
We've been constantly barraged with being told what to think. And I think the last thing that the Yes Movement the last thing that the Yes Movement should do is actually mimic that, but in a way that you think is right, kind of thing. It's that kind of notion of allowing people space to have differences of opinions and meet the common ground that we all have. We can't start shouting, forcing people to vote yes, because people in Scotland had that for 3 years now, and it's been constant and it's been pretty vile actually. So in that respect, it's kind of we can't just do the same thing on the other side because we think we're right. It's about finding the language and the structure to kind of allow that space. So actually, I think for us as the Yes Movement, I'd agree with Maggie. I think me and Alan wrote an article about that ages ago, but coming from under the Yes Movement, it's allowing a space to think and find common ground, and that will, by default, move people over to independence because they will know that they have the space to breathe there.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I have in my Twitter bio the little bit where you can explain a little bit about yourself. I have Scot by choice. I moved to Scotland nearly 22 years ago. Thought I'd be here for 3 years. Nearly 22 years later, I'm still here. And I think there's something about, in some ways, the idea that we are going to be voting for our future country makes us all Scots by choice. If you think about it like that, and what constitutes a Scot? I choose to be a Scot because I choose to engage in politics in this way, because I choose to engage with my neighbour in this way, because I choose to engage with people I fundamentally disagree with and don't actually want to spend that much time talking to, but I choose to engage with them in this way, because that's what it means to be a Scot for me. And I think that's a really nice way of framing it. And it maybe may help us check ourselves as well sometimes when we do go off on rants. And I realise I verge on the rant every now and again. So feel free to check me. If you say, "Oi, Maddie, calm down, back off," that's fine. And let's start doing that for each other, because I think that's the kind of way. Because what is a country? What is a nation? What is a state? It's people who want to share the ideals. It's people who want to share their country with each other. And I want to be able to live in a place where people will tell me, "Great, that was wonderful, but what the hell were you doing there?" Because I know I'm not going to have all the answers and always be right, and I want to be in community where I can learn and learn constantly. Because what else is life for if not sharing that with other people?
Okay, folks, I believe Keith is not here as yet, so we do actually have time for another question or two. Okay, right. Over here first, please. Ian, thank you.
I hear what you're saying. I think it sounds really good, but the reality of it is politics is a party system, and it will be for the foreseeable future. that's kind of a comment. The real question that I've got is the poll that was out this week shows that we're sitting at 51%. You talked earlier about focusing the efforts on persuading the undecideds. The unionists are fixed. I think we know that by now, after this length of time. The reality of it is we're talking 10% of the population, according to the latest poll. Okay? Let's not be naive. The other crowd are going to be tackling the same 10%. That are the 10-15% that swung in 2014 because of one headline in a newspaper, the vow. That moved that percentage across. This group of people are very, very transient. And they are going to be getting the same messages as we are trying to put it. They're going to get the opposite. So let's go on statistics and say they get half and we get half. We're going to reach 55, 56%. Is that enough to really justify independence?
Well, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, if you want.
I mean, the cop-out answer is to say, well, Brexit says yes. Brexit, the margin was 48-52, and it was an indicative referendum. It wasn't a legally binding referendum, and yet we are out. So I think constitutionally, if the UK government tried to say, oh, 56 isn't the threshold that we want in trade union votes and in all this kind of thing, it isn't enough. We'll just turn around and slap them around the face with Brexit.
Legally. But Boris is still going to say no.
Yes, no, I know, and there are different ways in which, but I think as I think it was Jake said earlier, the more times he says no, the stronger it makes the argument for us.
I disagree, sorry. I'm going to take a Boris here, I disagree. I don't care what you think, the answer's no.
But in some ways, he's not the only person who matters in this. The people who actually matter in the kind of country we want to build are people who will get the vote in Scotland.
I'm not giving you the vote.
And there are other ways.
I'm
No, that's fine. That's fine.
You're not getting your vote. Forget it. You're never ever getting your vote.
There are other ways, and one of the things I haven't talked about is the Scottish Independence Convention. So I've spoken about Voices for Scotland. That Voices is very clearly working on campaigning and focusing on the undecided, on that the transient group that you're talking about. One of the other bits of work that SIC is doing is looking at what are our several options when we keep getting the no, when we keep getting the response from no. And I haven't been directly involved in that, so I don't want to make stuff up and misrepresent the work that they've been doing, but I hope it's going to come out fairly soon. So we are looking at this, but also, share your ideas too, because we are up against it here. We know that legally and in terms of process, we know there are other ways of becoming independent. Some of them legal, some of them democratic, others using different means, sometimes illegal means. But it's about how we think about all of these things. And the reason I say Johnson isn't the only person who matters here, the people who matter are us, when there is such an overwhelming cry from Scotland saying, what the hell are you up to? We know the kind of country we want to have. We know the kind of country we want to do. There becomes a point where actually refusing a mechanism, it might, Section 30 might not be the way it happens, but refusing a mechanism becomes impossible for them to do. We're not there yet, and sometimes it's hard to see what you don't know, what you've never experienced. What is it they say? At the time when you're going through struggle, change seems impossible. After that change has happened, it seemed inevitable. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we've got with the independence, with the independence movement, or the independence question. Just to pick up on your question around politics. Politics is a party system. I want to disagree with you on that, because I think politics happens everywhere. Many more people engage in politics than are members of political parties. You know, politics happens in trade unions. Not all trade unionists are party political. People engage in politics in management systems. Not all, you know, people in management hierarchies are party politics. And it's about having the space to have the conversations to name that. That is politics. The conversation you have at the bus stop about, you know, whatever it's about a local planning application, that is politics. These are the kinds of things we need to be changing. We need, as a culture, as a society, to be changing in our minds what it is our country, our political language and our political nature is.
Lady at the back.
Siobhan didn't
Oh,
answer
sorry,
that.
sorry.
That's
Siobhan, did you?
I'll just do it very quickly. I think we're in uncharted territory here, aren't we? Because we're in a kind of environment where we don't know.
No.
You know, I don't know about anybody on like Friday morning, but I never had a flipping clue what a surgeon was going to say, because we don't know the events, and it's actually even hard to predict the next 6 months. You know, let alone the next 6 years, etc., etc. We are in uncharted territory. But I think, back to your point about, you know, Boris Johnson might say no, I think this is one of the areas where it is incumbent on us to come out the yes mode and start building consensus around the right to choose. Now, that doesn't always mean that people who want the right to choose will effectively vote independence, but the right to choose is fundamental. If you look at the Catalan example, there's a lot of people demanding the right to choose who would vote no for independence, if that makes sense. That is an area where we can build broad consensus across the board. That's a political thing. I think Sturgeon picked up on that yesterday. We build a political consensus. In terms of the party politics, I'd agree with Maggie, I disagree with you on that. I think it works on a traditional model of politics that we don't necessarily that's not relevant anymore. When I was doing work with the International Women's Centre, one of the questions that we did ask was, do you want to get involved in politics? As a woman, do you want to get involved in politics? And everybody went, no way, I'm not going to get involved in politics, absolutely not. But when you started unpicking it, you've had women wanting to get involved in community work, you had women wanting to get involved in education of other women. That's all politics, it's just redefining what politics is, as Maggie says.
Is that us done now?
Yes, that is us done. Can I apologise to the two of this gentleman and the lady at the back with your questions? Keith has arrived. Can I invite
Ask
you
Keith.
to...
Ask Keith, yeah.
Yes, ask Keith or indeed Maggie or Siobhan when you get an opportunity. Ian?
I'm just going to see if Jackie